Today, I'm doing a code review for my subscriber, Roman. Thank you so much, Roman, for reaching out to me. He asked me to do a code review, and before I get started, I just want to let you know what it is I will be looking at when I give my feedback. First, I'm not a designer. I don't like playing art director. I will look at things like maybe margin and padding if I think something isn't quite balanced or a little bit off. I have a lot of experience working with leadership teams who complain a lot about white space. So I'm very good at anticipating what your average director or leader is going to say in response to a website. Next, we're going to look at the site in the Chrome Dev Tools, and I'm going to look at things like HTML elements. Like, are you using header, footer, section, article, nav, things like that? Really, those really good semantic HTML5 elements that add so much for search engine optimization and accessibility. Next, we're going to check to see if the site's responsive. I want to see a site basically transition smoothly from desktop to mobile. There are so many devices and device sizes and screen sizes nowadays. You really cannot anticipate the number of screen sizes that you're going to be designing for. It's in your best interest to make sure that you have a smooth transition that goes from desktop to mobile and back again, and you won't have to worry about anything else going on in between if you can do that. Next, we're going to look at accessibility. And when it comes to accessibility, the best approach, if you're new to accessibility or you just may be feeling overwhelmed by accessibility, is I would encourage you to look at the WebAIM Million. This is a project that every year they take 1 million websites and they report back on the top, I think, 6 or 7 issues that they find consistently every year. And those things are text contrast, alt text for images, form inputs for labels, empty links, empty buttons, and document language. That's pretty interesting, actually. will leave this link down below. So if you want to read more about this, it is a great way to get started with accessibility, and I would encourage everybody to go look at this. Finally, I'm going to check and see, can we navigate the site with the keyboard? So I will reload the page, and then without using like my trackpad, mouse, anything like that, I'm just going to tab through. What gets focused? Can I navigate through the page using basically the tab and making sure that the correct items on the page are getting focus? And then anything else that jumps out to me as I'm looking at the site, I'll let you know what I think. And I don't think that my rules are hard and fast rules. A lot of the things that I do, I just do because I've learned over time that I think it's a better approach, and I'll share that information with you, and you can take it and do with it what you will. So let's get started. And I did check out his site ahead of time, so let's reload. And the first thing that I noticed is that he has a really nice transition in when the page loads. And I think that presents a really nice user experience. So let's go ahead and scroll from top to bottom. So on scroll, we see here that the header gets a little extra opacity. It's pretty faint there, but it gets a little extra opacity. We see everything pass underneath. And this right here, we have, I think this is so adorable. Well, first of all, you see this transition? There is a nice animation on these elements on scroll. And I think that's really nice. We have this nice little coffee splash off to the left here. And then we have our boxes. So, and then when we hover, we have this very nice transition. And I think that there was an extra animation here. There we go. The coffee cup and the coffee beans. And we see the text animating. That's a nice animation. So we basically have, what do we, use your words, Angela. So we basically have testimonials. That's what we have, reviews and testimonials. And then we have a nice transition. And here's our footer, also transitions in. So everything has a really nice animation on scroll. And I think this is a really nice user experience. So my first thought was there's a lot of padding here, but I think considering that we have almost this parallax type effect with some of the animations and the transitions, that makes sense why you left extra padding here or extra space. You know, your users, whoever basically hires you to build this website, they're probably going to have the final say on things like white space or padding, if they even notice it at all. This has a little extra padding here, and the only reason I noticed the amount of padding on the top of the footer is because there's so little on the bottom. But this is a very small thing, and you may not even be done with this yet. Overall, I think this is very smooth, very nice transition. So let's take a look under the hood and see what some of the markup looks like. So I see body, I see header, I see main, and I see footer. So that's good. Right off the bat, we have good, strong elements. We've got sections. Excellent. And then do we have an H1? Let's check and see here. I don't see an H1. So I see that we have being seen is a link. That's good. Back to the home page. Well, I think this is a one-page website. Let's see here. I don't see an H1 on the page. Maybe it's here and I don't see it. H1. No. So I would recommend putting an H1 somewhere on the page. That's good for accessibility, your template hierarchy of elements, and especially for search engine optimization. I think for a home page, it's appropriate to make the name of your site, especially since this is a link, an H1. You may not want to do that on inner pages. Like if you had inner pages like home, menu, about us, you would want those to be the H1s. But for your home page, I think it would be okay to make the being seen the H1. Very happy to see even elements just like header, main section. So I'm glad that you're doing that. Let's take a look at the navigation first. And we have a nav tag. Excellent. And then we have our nav items inside an unordered list. That's perfect. That's exactly what I would do. Now I took a look at the site before I started recording, and this particular text is called Playfair. It's a Google web font, and the plain normal size text by default, even though it's 16 pixels or the browser default 100%, it's still a pretty small text. So you did everything right here, Roman, by setting the font size to 1 rem. I still think this font size is too small. If it was me, I would increase this to 1.25 at least, just because to my eye, I think it looks too small, but I don't think you did anything wrong. That is the default size, 16 pixels. So that passes as far as being normal text size. I've just noticed that a lot with Google fonts, that some of their fonts, for whatever reason, just look remarkably small to me. So I'll change this. We have some buttons here. Okay, let's start here. Oh, also good job with using links, anchors, and buttons. So for people who may not know, an anchor or a link is navigation. So you use an A tag, an A element, if you are taking somebody someplace, maybe off the page. You use a button when you are performing an action, and you're doing that correctly here. So we have a sign in button, and then we have It also says sign up button, and these are not empty buttons, so that's perfect. We do have another button here, which is display none, and it's an icon menu, so I know what that means. However, this would be considered an empty button because there's no text here. So you would either want to use an ARIA label, and if we go to the MDN web docs and check out ARIA label, they have a great example here. ARIA label, you would do open or close. So this is an open button or a close button. You aren't using an SVG, you style the span, but let's go ahead and activate this. I did also notice, so here's our button. I can very faintly see the black hamburger menu here. So I don't know if that's an oversight, but a typical user wouldn't be able to see this. So we need two things. We need an ARIA label, and I think we just need to change the color of the span, and it looks like you're using pseudo tags. That is perfectly acceptable. I've done that a million times, and I think you just need to get in that ARIA label and change the color, and that'll be perfect. But button is the perfect use for something like that. Let's go down now to so here's our section. And it looks like you're using a background image for the hero, and that is completely fine. You can absolutely do that, as long as it's okay that that image doesn't have to add any narrative value to the page. So what I mean by that is, if this was a coffee shop and maybe this was a shot of the actual location or an interior shot of the coffee shop, you may not want that to be a background image. You may want that to operate as an image that is part of the normal flow of the DOM with alt text. That adds SEO value, that adds to the narrative value of the page in terms of a screen reader reading out the alt text, but also search engine optimization. So let's say this is a coffee shop and your hero image was a shot of the building or an interior of the coffee shop. Google can pick up that image and index it, and that can help you with search engine optimization. That may be something that your client wants to have be indexed by Google. So I used to do this all the time. I used to put my images in as background images, and I don't do that anymore. Now, you can still have an image be a normal part of the flow of the document, and just put in an alt text with an empty attribute, and the screen reader will know to skip it if you don't want screen readers to address it. But I think it's a better practice to have those images be part of the document flow and get indexed, because they really help with search engine optimization. Just a personal preference and something that I've been doing a lot the last few years, and every little bit helps when it comes to SEO, especially when you're dealing with actual shots of a location or a business or a product. That can be really important. So just a consideration you might want to think about. But certainly, I don't think you did anything wrong here with how you decided to do it. It's just an alternative that you may want to think about. Okay, and I do see an H1 here. So the H1 is the coffee. Okay, so I would also, let me see here, and here's the H2. So I would also recommend that your H1 comes before any H2 on the page. So I really think that bean scene should be the H1. And I think it should be the first thing that gets read out to the user on the page. Now, you could have a good reason for not doing that, but even if you want coffee to be the first thing, I would then say, we've got your morning covered with coffee does not need to be an H2. So if you really want this to be the H1, whatever that text is, the thing above it should not be an H2. It's not something that adds structure to the page in terms of the narrative value or the template hierarchy. So yeah, I don't think that it can be a subtitle. It makes sense to me as a subtitle, but I don't think it should be an H2. And then we have here order now. So this must be a link that, okay, so I click it and it probably takes me to the menu if I had to guess. I realize this is a one-page website. So as long as this is taking you someplace off the page, that's the appropriate use. It doesn't need to be a button, it can be a link. So, okay, so let's move down the page here. So here we've got a section. Here's our content. Here's our image. And our image does have alt text. I would prefer that you have something that is slightly more descriptive, because if somebody using a screen reader comes onto this page, it's okay for the alt text to see what the image actually is. So this just says coffee. Okay, technically that's correct, but you could also say coffee cup made from coffee beans, or, you know, outline of a coffee cup with coffee beans, something like that. It's okay to be slightly descriptive with your alt text. I also think that you should have a figure tag around your image. So let's check out figure tags, MDN, figure. You don't have to have a fig caption, but generally speaking, I always put figure tags around images. Again, it's good for accessibility, it's good for search engine optimization, and it is the semantic correct way to do it. So I would recommend that. I know this is nitpicky, but yeah, this is what I would recommend. Again, I see another image here. Okay, so this is your splash. So this is one case where I would actually recommend that I'm not sure that this needs to have alt text. Like, I don't know that you need to have this image read out to a screen reader or have this be described to a person using a screen reader that there's this little fun animation, because it's a user enhancement type experience, right? But it's not an important part of the narrative value of the page. I would either make this a background image, kind of like you did with the hero, or I would have it be like maybe a pseudo element. I don't think this needs to be an image. If you decide to keep it an image, I would remove the alt text. So leave the attribute, but just remove whatever is inside this attribute here. A screen reader will come along and see there's empty alt text, and it will just skip it altogether. That is probably the easiest thing, unless you have a really great reason for why you need to have alt text for this particular image. I think you can leave it out and you don't have to have that called out to a screen reader. Let's keep going. Okay, here's the next section. We have an H2 for this section. Perfect. And then we have, yep, just a paragraph tag for this. That's exactly what I would do. And again, I would put, instead of this being a div, I would actually do a figure tag. I think that that's a better way to go. And we have an image with alt text. That's perfect. I do think, again, that you can be slightly more descriptive. So you could say, you know, cappuccino with the, you know, foamy heart, or I don't know, what do they call that? Like a little heart design with a, the point of alt text is that you're still providing a good user experience to somebody using a screen reader. So I think it's totally worth Googling just how to, you know, look for a concise way to write alt text. There are alt text services out there that will write you a paragraph of text for alt. Please don't use those. You don't need to do that. But if you can just come up with one concise sentence to describe your images, think of it as you are still giving your users a good user experience for people who have a screen reader. That's my main point there. And then I think that these are getting a little bit cut off, so I'm not sure what's happening here. But let's go down and see what's happening in this section. Yeah, I think the transform might be a little bit off here, mobile. So let's see what happens when we come out about this far and then come back out here. What happens if I reload? Okay, so now this pops back up. If I go down to mobile, these kind of get stuck behind. And if I scroll, yeah, a few of these things are getting stuck behind the section below. And I'm pretty sure it's because of the transition. So you might still be working on this, Roman, but I just see going from desktop to mobile, I see things getting a little bit stuck in some of these animations that you have. And to be clear, I think the animations, like if I had one word to describe the user experience of your site, it would be that it is very soothing, right? To have this really nice, slow transition in. I think it's really soothing. I just think that there are some maybe some issues going from desktop to mobile that you're still smoothing out, you're still working out. So let's also check contrast. So I did check your contrast. Let's pop out here. I did check the contrast a little bit earlier, and for the most part, there are no issues with contrast. But I'll show you how I checked this here. So this is the color of the text in the navigation, F3, F1, 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 and then we can go color picker, and then I can come up here and I'm just going to pick what that is right there. And that passes. And then if we on scroll, we can color pick again. There we go. So we can color pick here. There we go. So now we see that this is this up here, and it does meet the contrast ratio. So that's excellent. And then I think this black also works on the yellow. Let's try it. We'll do this. So that's that color. I'll pick this. That's that color. And this also meets contrasts. Excellent. And it's AA and AAA. And then let's look here. And this would be white. Excellent. Very good, Roman. Very, very good. So we're meeting color contrast. You have the correct use of buttons and links. I did see one empty button that I think you could fix with an ARIA label. Editing Angela here. I just wanted to pop in quick and let you know that I realized I forgot to check the accessibility of the yellow buttons against the white background, and those are not accessible. So Roman, you would need to either change the background to black, which the yellow against black is accessible, or you would need to find a different color for your buttons. Sorry I missed that while I was doing the code review. Yeah, I caught that in editing. I see up here that we have the correct doc type, HTML, so that's perfect. Let's go ahead and do keyboard navigation now. So I'm going to go ahead and reload. And without touching anything, I'm just going to tab through the site. So we've got our logo or the name of our site, which is in an anchor tag, so I would expect that to get focus. Our menu and our buttons all get focus. And then our images, okay. That's interesting. So, okay, so this image is a link, this title is a link, and this button is a link. Let's look at this. Okay, so I would do, if all three of these things link to the same thing, I think that's fine. I don't think this is wrong. I think this could be more efficient though. I know that where I work, things like this, they want the entire card to be one link. And I think that that's a good way to go. I think that this is awkward that we've got an image that's a link, we've got a title that's a link, and we've got a button that's a link. I think that it should be probably just the button, or it should be the whole thing. But I think you could wrap an anchor tag around this entire card, and you could trigger your animation and your button hover all at the same time by wrapping that anchor around the card. So I would look into that. That would be my advice for that. So if this is, let's go, we'll go through here again. And those are all getting focus because they're all links. Our button down here is now getting focus. Oh, we do have an input. Okay. And then we also have our arrows for the testimonials. Those work. Excellent. And okay, let's check and see if we have a label here for our form. And we do not. So we definitely need to have a label to go with the form. So let's do MDN form label. So I would check out the form. Let's see here. Form, actually we want label right here. Check out the label element on MDN. We definitely want to make sure that we've got a label for every input, and you don't have to show the label. You could do something like you could have an access hidden class. So this is a good example of access hidden here. You can write a class called access hidden. If you need to include text that describes something or reads out the words or something to a screen reader, but then you can write CSS like this that hides it in a screen reader friendly way. So I would look into using maybe a class with some access hidden CSS and then hide your labels. But you do also need to do a for and an ID in order to associate that label with your input. So I would encourage you to check out labels. So I do see one missing here, but you have a button here, and as long as you have a button inside of a form element, the button knows what to do in order to submit, so that's perfectly fine. I see, let's go up here to your feedback. And so we have buttons here in order to navigate through the slider, which is perfect. And then this is the div container for the feedback. You may want to consider using block quotes. So there is a block quotation element. This is totally appropriate for these types of testimonial block quotes. I don't think it's the end of the world to not do it, but I think it's also appropriate. And then this is a good use of H2 and H3. So you have that in the correct order. That's really good. And then it looks like our footer is a little bit cut off here down at the bottom. Once we get all the way down into mobile, it looks like, well, that's a little cut off here too. And I think our text is, we're missing the quote down in mobile. So I think there's a little tightening up to do when it comes to mobile. You may still be working on that. I would encourage you to find media queries that make this pretty seamless. Honestly, this isn't bad. I can see this a lot better now. I would make this white to go along. And let's see if we can, let's reload this. Oh. And make sure that we can tab through. Okay, so do you see here where if I tab through on mobile, I know what's happening. I wonder how we're hiding this. Yeah. Okay, so you're hiding the entire thing off screen, which is fine. That's not wrong. However, if we tab through, let me reload this again. If we tab through, anybody on a screen reader, the focus is on those menu items, but the menu isn't actually being displayed. It's hidden off canvas. So people aren't going to be able to open that until they've been forced to tab all the way through the navigation on mobile. So there are accessibility friendly ways to do that. You can either move your open and close button to before the navigation. So right here we have it after. I mean, this is you could really just take this and move it ahead, move it up in the DOM. That would be the obvious way to, I think that would be the obvious way to fix that, because the navigation is already being hidden, although you may have to shift this around a little bit. But even with some absolute positioning, you could have the button wherever you want it to be. It just needs to be triggered. The other obvious thing to do is that you use display none. I mean, we have to be careful. Display none is really aggressive. When you use display none on something in CSS, a screen reader will completely ignore it, but that's appropriate. And navigation's a perfect example of how that's appropriate. You don't want a screen reader to read it out. So you would display block or display none based on when this gets triggered. And that's absolutely okay. So once this is triggered, here's the other thing I'm seeing is that once this is triggered, the focus is lost. The focus is not inside this container. So there's really no way for me, if I'm using a screen reader, to now tab through. We're tabbing through the rest of the document. So I have no way to actually access these things inside the menu. And the obvious way to fix that is to take this button, and it has to come somehow before the menu. And I still think that you can maintain this style, how this is laid out up here, and still achieve that. So I would encourage you to work on that as well. And it's really, you don't have to have a screen reader. I don't know how to use a screen reader. I've been taught, I'm sorry to say I've been taught, and I've not ever continued using it. I do rely on the fact that I can tab through and I see the correct things getting focus. I can trigger a menu opening, and then once that menu opens, I can continue to tab through the menu, and that focus doesn't get lost in the rest of the document. What else do we have here? I think that's it. Roman, you are well on your way. I think that you did a really, really nice job with this site. So let's review what it is that you need to work on. So I think that there are not necessarily margin or padding issues. I think there are some layout issues when it comes from the transition to desktop to mobile and back again. And I think it's because of some of your animations are just sort of getting stuck. So I would encourage you to look at that and see if you can find a solution for that. I think the overall responsiveness isn't bad. I think it's just the transition from one to another. I would encourage you to not, so in the old days, 10 years ago, I used to just think about desktop, mobile, and I never worried about what was happening in between. But because there are really an infinite number of browser sizes nowadays, I do think it's really important to have a smooth transition from mobile back up to desktop, because if you can do that, you don't have to worry about the number of browser window sizes or devices out there. You can just know in your heart of hearts that you can go from one to another smoothly, and that wherever you land in between, it's going to be okay. You didn't do a bad job on accessibility at all. There are some things that need to be improved. We saw the form is missing a label. Yeah, that's definitely a problem. And we saw one button that was empty, and you can fix that with an ARIA label. So definitely read up on MDN, and I'll make sure to link those down below as well. You had the correct document language type, so that's excellent. You had alt text for images. I do think that this hero image should be a normal part of the document flow. It's funny because I kind of think the opposite of what you did. I think a hero image should be part of the DOM, not a background image, because again, if that image is important to the business or it's a product, you would want that to get indexed, and you would want it to have that narrative value of the page and being called out to the screen reader. But then you have the option of not having it called out to the screen reader just by leaving the alt text empty, right? But then you had where's our splash? Where's our little splash? I don't see it here. We'll reload the page. Oh, did something happen to our splash? Well, we had a splash. Maybe Roman is working on his site right now as we talk. There was a little splash here off to the side, and I would recommend that actually be a background image. You could even just do that inside of a pseudo class. Of course, if you've already done the work to style it and code the transition, I would just leave the alt tag empty. That's something that I don't think needs to be read out to a screen reader. It's just purely one of those visual enhancements for a user. Although we do have a couple other transitions here. So here we have this image, which I think is the coffee cup. Oh, this is actually the coffee beans. I mean, I think that this alt text could be empty. Let's see here. So here's our text. Here's our H2. Okay. And then here's the coffee cup. I mean, I personally would not have alt text for these two things unless you felt like these user experience animations were a really, really important part of the experience for a screen reader. I would concentrate on having things that were like products or the location or things like that. Things that you would think of. Think of it this way. What images on your site would you want to be indexed by Google in order to help your search engine optimization? Those are the things that I would make sure that you have really good alt text for, and make sure that they're wrapped in a figure tag. Anything else that's just like purely decorative, purely user experience, you can have as a background image or leave the alt text empty. I'll let you decide. I mean, I think those are things that you can decide for yourself in your site, and there's no hard and fast right or wrong answer. So, Roman, great job. I think you are well on your way. I think this website is honestly super cute, very soothing. And I think that once you get a few of these last minute things figured out, it's going to be an absolute winner. So good job. If you'd like to have me do a code review of your site, we have a Discord server. You are welcome to join that. You can reach out to me there. You can also send me a message on Instagram. And until next time, have a great day wherever you are. Bye.